I'm Estelle Bingham, and this is the Love Purpose Connection podcast. Here on Love Purpose Connection, I want to explore how to discover and really develop the secrets of a good life. I'm a holistic therapist and healer, and so over this series, I'll be sharing frank, inspiring, sometimes raw, often joyful conversations with a different guest each time, exploring just what those three words really mean, but also crucially, how you can discover and develop them in your own life. Today I'm talking to British-Portuguese musician Nessi Gomez about her album Diamonds and Demons, which is all about bringing light and understanding to our shadow selves. We talk about her healing journey, which included working with plant medicine, and also her vocal Odyssey workshops, which helps bring people back to themselves through the powerful healing of the voice. Welcome, Nessi, to the Love Purpose Connection podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's so nice. I'm really, really honoured that you've made it, actually, and Nessi. And we were talking, weren't we, before we started recording about you being in the Channel Islands right now.
Yeah.
In Guernsey.
In Guernsey, my little home where I was born.
What was that like?
It was a mixture of things. I mean, on a positive note, it was great growing up on an island. Obviously, it's very safe and everything's close and you get to be with all the elements. I mean, you really feel the winter elements when they kick in the winter and stuff. And there's something very beautiful and dramatic about island life in that way. Growing up here, even though I was born here, it was quite challenging. It wasn't like my favourite memories. Growing up here back in the 80s, like my family are Portuguese.
Yeah.
And back in the 80s, there was quite a large Portuguese community here. You know, they would bring them over to kind of work in agriculture. But yeah, I just remember those times being quite challenging and feeling a bit of an outsider, even though I was born here. I think racism was and discrimination was really prevalent back then. Back in the 80s, I just remember it being quite challenging. At least that was my experience. But also, I think a lot of beauty came out of that challenge as well, you know.
Okay, so growing up in Guernsey with a Portuguese family and feeling that there is this sort of latent racism and growing up with that and feeling like a bit of an outsider, but like you say, there's sort of a beauty in that. Do you feel like that was the sort of first layer of your music and bringing that to your creativity?
It was a way for me to escape into other realities, create a reality where I felt safe and I felt I could express myself. I was writing a lot of poetry at the time. And then later on, I was exploring that with music. And music was like a lifesaver for me because I suffered a lot from mental health as well in my kind of young teenage years. And I think also growing up in a Portuguese family had its complications as well. And I say this with love and respect because our parents do the best they can. You know, my background also with it being quite patriarchal, and we didn't have an environment where we could really share what was going, you know, how we were feeling. You know, we didn't talk about our feelings in the family. Everything often got swept under the carpet. And my relationship with my father is really beautiful now, but at the time I remember it being quite challenging, and he was very protective over me. And so that created, you know, it just came from very different angles. So for me, music, it was a tool for me to express the parts of myself that weren't being able to be expressed within my family, but also a place for me to kind of create a new reality for myself and to put down all these intense emotions into song or into music.
I always feel that the writing of poetry, which is something that I did growing up too, is such an incredible therapy. It's such an amazing way to just make sense of all that stuff that starts to swirl around. And I always suggest it as a thing to do with my clients, and, you know, to just some sort of journaling. When you talk about mental health in your teens, what did that look like?
It was a very dark time in my life. I was on antidepressants, not for very long, but I remember the doctors kind of prescribing them to me at the age of 13. And yeah, it was just a downward spiral, probably starting from the age of 11 down to 15, where I actually tried to kind of, take my own life. I ended up in hospital for a week. That was like the kind of the what do you call it?
The pinnacle.
The pinnacle, that's it. It was the pinnacle. It was like, okay. And from that point on, it was like coming back from that experience, there was I guess there was something in me that really wanted to live. And I felt like that my life started at that point, really. But yeah, it was just, again, not being in an environment where we could openly share what was going on. I guess I became quite private with what was happening. I was very young, and I don't know. And also at school, it was just a combination of things, and it really affected my mental health. This might sound really weird, but I don't regret that part of my life either, because it shaped who I am today, and I think it's really contributed to myself as an artist. And not saying that you have to go down that road to be an artist, but I guess I just felt a lot at that age, and maybe we all do, right? Maybe even now it's like I feel so much sometimes, just, but I'm in a very different place, and I feel like music was my medicine. I did a lot of kind of talking therapy, and with all my love and respect to that kind of field, I often found that it would just conjure up all these feelings and, emotions. I'd talk about my story, and it would become so exhausting to kind of go over that narrative. And then the session would finish, and then you're left with all this kind of yucky feeling. Whereas music for me was like my medicine. It was really my healing medicine. And I feel like it really contributed to my healing path. That really helped to kind of bring all that density that I was feeling in my system, and just purge it out through sound, through voice, without having to kind of go over the story of why I feel like I feel and what it's connected to. It's just like a spiral for me that just, I didn't feel like it really took me anywhere. It just made me feel more stuck. Whereas singing really helped to release this shadow toxic stuff that was kind of, I guess, I'd been collecting for many years. There was a lot of stuff in my basement, and it was a very painful process, but a needed process.
Well, you've got all this energy happening inside, and like you say, the shadow that's screaming to be explored and weighs in, and you find this poetry and then the sound, finding your voice and how you're really self-soothing. That's like a massive healing tool. It's like central to your purpose on the planet, really, isn't it, actually? And Diamonds and Demons, which was the big album, was then, emerged, was then created, was then born on a houseboat in London.
Yeah, on a barge. It was very organic in that way. It was kind of a bit of the unknown as well. It wasn't like clear as day as how this album's going to unfold. It was kind of like, taking each song at a time and seeing what it kind of needed. And it was very romantic, but it also had its challenges, I guess, like any creative project.
When you go into that creative space, Nessi, do you feel that you start to channel a universal energy, or what comes in for you in the alchemy of sound and creativity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For me, it is very much like that. The way it would happen for me, like I was never one to kind of write down lyrics on a piece of paper and then try create music to that. That's never the formula I use. I don't find it, it doesn't flow for me in that way. What tends to happen is maybe I'm coming up with a melody on the guitar, and I kind of go into a bit of a trance-like state, and then I start to kind of have a lot of imagery come. So in that way, I feel like, I guess I am, that channel starts to open. It's like words or visions start to come, and then that helps me know the direction of the song and what to write. And I'm very like, it has to really resonate. Like one word can completely throw me. I'm so sensitive about words and how they feel when I sing them, and they've got to sit in my body in a really good way.
So we've got this creative process, and you get the visions as well, like so images that sort of
exactly.
Almost they drop into the consciousness, don't they? They kind of drop in from like an ether. It's like they exist somewhere, don't they? And then you become the channel for those things, and they start to they become reality. They sort of actualize, don't they?
Yeah,
within
definitely.
The channel that is
that's
you.
really how it feels.
So, Diamonds and Demons, what do you feel came from that? What do you feel like that is? What offering is that? What's the invitation there? For people who haven't heard that album, what would you say that's about?
I guess for me, when I was writing that album and the nature of my songs, there seemed to be this theme of expressing the darkness as well as the light, which is why it's called Diamonds and Demons. It was really the human journey that we all go through. And I guess sometimes, like some people would probably categorize my music as spiritual, and I don't really think of it in that way at all. Maybe a little bit kind of, I felt like in the wellness or well-being or spiritual, we also have shadow parts within ourselves, and we have to love those parts of ourselves. And I feel that's one thing within my album, is that it can kind of like share those more intense parts of the human journey, but there's a sense of hope in that as well. It's not like, oh, look at me, poor me, my life is like this. No, there's this sense of optimism as well. And for me, that album was really, I guess, that invitation to embrace the full spectrum of who we are in this life.
Yeah, so a sort of response to the toxic positivity that abounds in the sort of this area of well-being and wellness, that this spiritual bypassing that can happen.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm so allergic to that stuff. It just gets under my skin. As a musician, I don't want to just write rainbows and unicorns. I want to be real. I want to show the whole spectrum.
So it's really the grit of who we are, isn't it? And it's that going into the dark places and going into the basement, which I always talk about. I always talk about it's time to go into the basement, or that room that you really don't want to go into, and shine the light in those places and integrate all of those pieces of who we are, and in a really healed and whole way. And that's really what the journey's about.
Yeah, and I feel like that gives a lot of healing in itself. It's not necessarily fixing that or trying to get rid of those parts of ourselves, but just bringing the awareness to those parts of ourselves, and just you can just breathe into it and be like, it's okay not to be okay.
So tell me a little bit about your spiritual journey and where it's taken you.
I guess my spiritual journey started, with my depression, and obviously ending up in hospital at the age of 15. And that was like probably the starting point for me. And then I guess at the age of 29, I was like, okay, I want to do one more last big trip before I settle down. So I went to South America with a dear friend of mine. And that continent, I think that really, it was just everything in the right timing as well, where I was in my life. But South America really changed my life. There's something very mystical about that land. That's also where I first kind of got introduced to plant medicine. So for some years I was working with ayahuasca and peyote, mostly ayahuasca. And this, I guess, really was a huge part in my spiritual journey. I ended up living in Costa Rica, where I met my husband, in a community called Pachamama. I was only meant to be there for 5 weeks, but I ended up living there for 3 years. And it's like an alternative spiritual community. So like there's 4 pillars that hold that place, which is like the meditation, the body cleansing, the therapy work, the ceremonies with plant medicine. Living there for 3 years really, it was like being at university, right, in a spiritual community. That really shaped my life. That, it was such a different world to what I had ever experienced.
Since then, you've started the vocal Odyssey.
Yes. So when we came back from Costa Rica, and I wrote to a friend who was studying sound therapy, and I asked her if she knew anything about voice therapy. And she sent me a link and I signed up to a course with the British Academy of Sound Therapy. And then after I qualified with them in 2013, I had the vision to create a workshops for voice liberation. And I called it Vocal Odyssey, Meeting with the Spirit of Your Voice. Because for me, I've met so many people in the last kind of 20 years. And some people would approach me and be like, "Oh, I'd really love you to give me vocal coaching," and I never was really interested in that. That was never really my story. I'm not really like a singing teacher, because when I started, it was more to do with meeting my voice in a different way. Of course, it's great to have the technical knowledge, but for so many of us, we're so longing to meet our voice, and maybe over the years, we've been kind of shut down, we've been silenced, or we've been ridiculed. So there's some trauma in the way we express ourselves, not necessarily just through singing, but even how we communicate. So I wanted to create a container where people could really meet themselves, meet their voice. And for me, the Vocal Odyssey is beyond singing. It's not just about singing, it's about our relationship to ourselves. And there's nothing more beautiful, at least when I'm kind of holding that space, is to see somebody come into that room, have this belief that they're not able to do it. And at the end, you see the strength, you see this courage come from somewhere very deep. You see like that light bulb moment within them, like that reconnection to themselves. And it's so powerful. It's beautiful work. I feel very honored to be able to share that with people.
So what does the next year feel like to you, Nessi? You've got this amazing Vocal Odyssey work that is like an ongoing part of your purpose, isn't it?
Yeah.
To bring people back into relationship with their voices, to embody the voice and the power of that sort of coming home in that way. It changes your life.
Yeah.
And what about sort of musically? What do you envisage, or what are you manifesting? What are you bringing in for the next year?
Well, I really, obviously, I am longing. I feel that little fire within me starting to get a bit bigger. And since I've had my daughter, I've kind of put my music to the side a little bit. I would love to be in a space where I could create more music next year. I'm actually in my early pregnancy as well, so I'm expecting another baby very soon.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's not soon. It's in December. My baby's due. So I don't know what the next coming year is going to be like. Full of running children. Yeah. Having children I feel like they're an addition to our life. It's obviously some things take priority, like having my daughter is my priority and raising her. But I still want to integrate that into the work.
And that's something that happens, right?
Yeah.
There's how creativity sits with the creativity of motherhood, like showing up to that every day and being present with that. And, just allowing that relationship to sort of be, trusting that it ebbs and it flows.
Exactly.
And it will come back in.
Exactly.
When it's meant to.
That's how I feel about it. Like, I have to watch those voices within me as well, because sometimes there is that, like, I need to do more, And but I want to really honor that this is creativity as well. Like, the fact that I haven't kind of written anything for some years, I don't want that to scare me. Like, just trusting that there is an ebb and flow. There's like a death and rebirth of the creative process. So when I say the words love, purpose, connection to you, what comes in for you? Okay. Love, purpose, and connection. Because it's so vast. Like, on a personal level, for me, like, just doing things with love in our hearts and to be in service. So that gives me like that purpose and also that connection, like feeling connected to something bigger than myself, not just about me or my immediate family, but the world around me, the planet, loved ones, to bring something that brings beauty to life, to bring love in those places, even if it's challenging. And I guess that's kind of what comes for me. So one of the things that I did speak to you about, which was when I've had quite a big day of work with my sessions, and
I often play music to clear energy and to realign energy, to bring new energy in. Also, I play music on my retreats. And one of the tracks that I love is All Related. That is one of the most beautiful tunes ever.
Thank you.
I love it, Nessi. And I wondered if you might be able to, for people who haven't heard it, just hum it. You don't have to sing it if you don't want to, but at least that they get a feeling of that feeling.
Can I play it on guitar?
I would love you to play it on guitar.
Grande Espírito, agradeço Pachamama, Wakandanga, Tonkashila, agradeço Pachamama, en el cielo con los pájaros que vuelan, las oraciones y amor, misterio de la luna, amor, y vida preciosa, amor, dame fuerza, amor, confía así. I crossed over anxious spirit, lost my knowing, confused senses, ancient voices spill their secrets, taking footsteps without mother, all related, broken hearted, more darkness with this love. We all related in love. Give me strength in this love. We all related in love. Give me strength in this love. We all related.
And really, that says it all, doesn't it? It's just that we're all related in love.
Yeah.
And that is love, purpose, connection.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what it.
I think that's the thing. The essence of this song was like, we come from all different walks of life. We might have different belief systems, we have different values, different, religious beliefs, whatever. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want to feel safe. We all want to have a roof over our head. We all want to give the love to our family, to our friends. We want to feel love. So that whole song, we are all related in love, in that sense, like we are one. For me, that's what makes sense. We are one through love.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the Love Purpose Connection podcast, Nessi.
Oh, well, I'm very honoured and I'm grateful that you reached out to me. It's been really lovely chatting with you.
To find out more about Nessi, you can find her at Nessi Gomez Music on Instagram. You can find me at Estelle.Bingham. If you've enjoyed the show, do share it, rate it and review it. Until the next one, wishing you all more love, purpose and connection.